welcome to yet another episode of Witches and Wine. I love how it froze on her drinking.
Yep.
Oh, there we go. It froze on you drinking. That was perfect, actually. Witches and Wine. This is the show where we talk about witchy stuff and we drink wine. Clink and drink. Clink and drink. Mm-mm-mm. I am your hostess with the mostest, Lola Stardust. And before we begin our topic, I want to do our disclaimer. Mm-hmm. This show is called Witches and Wine. So there will be wine that we partake in.
And witches.
And witches. So some of us might get a little do-do-do-do-do, talky, free-flowing. And some people don't like that. So if you are one of those people that doesn't like to see witches drink wine and get a little tipsy, then there's this wonderful thing in the corner of your screen. It's an X. And all you got to do is click on it and you don't have to watch us. It's magical how that works.
Pretty amazing. The power of the X.
The power of the X. All right. So before we get to our topic, I'm going to turn it over to my partner in crime, my husband, my high priest, my best friend, the wine connoisseur, Silenus Stardust. Tell us about the wine, honey.
Oh, I'd be happy to, honey.
I will hold that for you, honey.
So tonight we have...
Do you need to look at it? I'm sorry.
It's a Chateau de Nages out of Costieres Denimes region. This is a French wine out of the Rhone Valley. 95% Syrah, 5% Mourvedre. This is the Joseph Torres series. Joseph Torres was the founder of this winery, and these use the most choicest of grapes from this vineyard.
Choice.
Very, very complex, very earthy, a lot of minerality, a lot of blackberry, a touch of spice, and very dry, which is up me and Lola's alley. We like the dry, spicy, robust wines.
Because we're dry and spicy and robust.
Yeah, it sounds about right. Hey. Bottle of this is going to run you between $20 and $30. So a solid price, but not anything unreasonable. And I highly, highly recommend it for people who like a dark, spicy, dry wine. If you like a fruity, sweet wine, don't go this route. It's not going to do anything for you. No. So, yeah.
Well, thank you, sweetie. This is a very... It's chewy.
Yeah,
is that the word?
There's some chewiness.
It's
without being tannic.
Wine people understand that. I tried it. That's why I have a pointy hat to catch all the things that try to go over my head.
So you guys can understand what the word tannic means. It means it's high in tannins, which is that grippy feeling you sometimes get in your mouth. On a very wine where you can kind of just feel like just grabbing the inside of your teeth and your lips.
But that doesn't have this.
No, so it's not tannic, it's dry.
Okay, well, look at that.
You see, so it's an easy way to understand tannins.
Thank you. All right, so as you can see, we have this beautiful lady on our screen. It is Dee Blisswitch. She is a dear friend of ours. We have gone to school together. We have been on staff for the ATC together.
We live in the same town.
We live 5 minutes away from each other.
Yes, we do.
We worked on Red Tent together. We've done all sorts of stuff together. She's a dear friend. I love her dearly. She's our tech witch. She's amazing. Welcome, Dee, to the show.
Salute.
Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
And what are you drinking?
I am drinking, because I'm not a wine connoisseur, I go to Silenus's place of work and say, what kind of wine do I want? And he points it out. This is actually the Witching Hour, which I know he's talked about on the show before. But I get the sweet red blend because I like the sweet and fruity.
Sweet and fruity. Would that be because you're sweet and fruity?
It is.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And I'm dry and robust?
I can appreciate dry and robust, just not in my wine.
Yeah. Well,
I prefer moist and robust, but that's just me.
Well, that's for a different conversation. So the other day, me and Dee and my coven sister Danielle were having an online coffee date. And this subject came up because it doesn't really come up in the Wiccan realm of studying.
Yep. And you don't read about it?
I've never really read. Now, if our viewers, because we do the live chat on Thursday. So if they're in the live chat on Thursday, right now is what they're watching. And you guys can put something in there that says, wait, I have read about this. Please, please, by all means,
let us know.
Let us know, because between me, Danielle, my husband, all the stuff we've read on a collective brain, I've never come across this topic, and it's forgiveness. And I am a true believer in forgiveness. I think it's important. I think it's important to forgive yourself first, because when you're able to forgive yourself, it's a lot easier to forgive others. But I believe that's kind of what has to happen in order for it to be, I don't know, what's the word I'm looking for? Reciprocal, or...
Well, no, for the ability to move on.
The ability to move on, yes.
And not have things hold you down or hold you back.
Yes. Because we hold on to a lot of things. Yes. We're human. Witches are human. We are not infallible. As much as our witchy egos sometimes wants to make ourselves sound that way, we're really not. I brought Dee onto this because she started reading about the concept of forgiveness. She's been looking into this topic. So I wanted to get her insight. So the first question, because you asked me this, and I remember me and Danielle were like, I don't know, is why is it that forgiveness isn't really discussed in Wicca? And you were looking for an answer, weren't you? You were trying to compile like what different. So can you tell me, when you've asked different people that, what are the different answers that you've heard, if you've heard any?
I have, because I've been struggling, as we all have, with a lot of injustices and seemingly unfair things that have happened in the last year, whether we're talking about on a personal level, a local level, national, global, whatever we're talking about. And I found that I was kind of reliving some hurt from a long time ago, things that I'd processed, things I'd gone to therapy for. I'd gotten past those, but they started kind of bubbling back up. And I got to the point where it was like I was really struggling to let go of some of these things. And I was raised in a Judeo-Christian home, very, very fundamental home, with fantastic virtues that were communicated to me through wonderful parents and a community. But forgiveness was talked about a lot in my Christian upbringing.
Yep.
Forgiveness is a big topic in Judeo-Christian religion.
Yes, it is.
But what I recognized is I was seeing this like kind of lack of this discussion now that I'm Wiccan. And so I started asking my teacher, my mentor, those people that I respect and admire, what's your take on forgiveness, and why do we not discuss it in Wicca? Now, when I say we and Wicca, my experience with Wicca is limited to the particular tradition I'm in, the training that I've done. Wicca is bigger than that. And there may be parts of Wicca that this is discussed a lot.
Yeah.
But I hadn't encountered it. So I got a variety of answers. Some were, we focus more on personal responsibility in Wicca. Therefore, it's an idea that we are all walking a sacred, holy path, and our lessons to learn are something that we help create because we create our reality. Therefore, forgiveness is kind of a non-topic. Because if we are creating our reality, then why would we forgive anyone? We've created our reality. Other people have pointed me to concepts from other religions or other traditions that they've incorporated into theirs. One of those is the Hawaiian ancestral concept of Ho'oponopono.
Yep.
I had other people that were like, well, we don't talk about forgiveness because that's a Christian thing.
Yes, I've heard that too.
And there's a real resistance to using the same kind of terminology, or because it's in a way to separate ourselves from a religion that a lot of people leave because they've experienced some sort of injustice or some sort of harm. And so that distancing is to protect those people that are triggered by some of those things. So I found a variety of answers when I was asking people. And so it just kind of spurred me on to keep searching for for what I believe about forgiveness, where I stand, where it works into my personal practice.
What? Go ahead.
Oh no, please.
Are some of the answers that you got fall into the karmic or cosmic justice concepts? Did anyone bring those up to you?
No one did, but it was certainly an idea that I pursued because I think that's kind of an underlying.
Yeah.
The idea that there are consequences to our actions in this lifetime, and there will be consequences at in karma.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's kind of what I was taught. I was also taught that, and we talked about it, and it, my high priest at the time simplified it, but we went into more deeper conversation. But it was high priest.
Yeah, no, I know.
It was about, you just make right. If you do something wrong, you don't need forgiveness because you need to make it right. So you kill someone's pig, you buy them a new pig. But then we brought up, yeah, well, you kill someone's kid, you can't provide them another kid.
Well, I think in that particular justice system, that idea of justice, there is a value placed on everything, even a child, which is hard for us as mothers to, or fathers. I don't mean to discount parents in general. For us, there's nothing you could give me that would be worth my child. But in those systems of justice and in those religious, I did some research on some of those. That idea of justice, they put a value on everything, whether it's your spouse or your child or your livestock or your land or.
Yeah.
Well, that's a lot of what the Islamic faiths and traditions will deal with. Is everything has a value, and there is a ability to pay for your sin or your action to make things right. And it's a very eye for an eye concepts, but the
but
debt
that
is
still
paid.
Doesn't talk about
the forgiveness
because we could be. I'm sorry if you hear my dog in the background making weird noises. That's just what happens. She just likes to roll around and growl.
She's got an itch spot.
She's got an itch she can't get. So that's that. We still don't talk about, because again, we're human and we're gonna hold on to some stuff. And what do we do with this stuff that we're holding on to? Grudges, animosity, whatever it is, we all have it. We all have that baggage that we're holding on to that may have happened yesterday or may have happened 20 years ago. There's still some stuff we got to work through. And so I think forgiveness is an important part of that, because it teaches you, and I don't want to, again, and I'm working with this like you are. This is a new concept in my belief system. But I feel it shows you that you don't have to necessarily forgive a person for doing something, but you have to let go of it.
We have the phrase "let go and let goddess."
Let go and let goddess. So does goddess do the forgiving or the non-forgiving for you when we say that? Do you know what I'm saying, Dee?
I do know what you're saying, and I have found I'm currently reading 2 books, so I'm not an expert on this. I am still working through it, but I have come to some understandings for myself. And one of those is that the injustice itself is separate from our reaction to it. So when something happens that we feel is unfair, or we feel is unjust, whether that's someone changes lanes in front of me on the freeway too closely and I feel like they're cutting me off.
Yeah.
Or someone is rude to me in, I was going to say a grocery store line, but I haven't been in the grocery store in a long time.
but a public setting.
A public
but
setting.
A public setting when someone seems to be rude to you, or we can go bigger than that when we talk about racial injustice or any kind of exploitation, whether it's financial exploitation or sexual exploitation, to global scale. I mean, we can talk about war but it doesn't matter what scale you're talking about. I have found that you have the injustice.
Okay.
And we have our reaction to it. And in some cases, the act of injustice kind of wins twice. We're initially hurt by something that happens to us, but then we are continually hurt by our emotional reaction to it.
Yes.
So I'm currently reading 2 books. I want to make sure I get the titles right. So let me make sure that I've got that. One is The 8 Keys to Forgiveness by Robert Enright, who is a psychiatrist. He's a doctor. And it is non-religious. It is very secular. The 8 Keys to Forgiveness. And the other book is the Book of Ho'oponopono by Natalie Lamboy. In reading these, I am finding that I do kind of a twofold. It's actually a mantra that I have started for myself. So when something happens, we'll say somebody cuts me off in traffic. This happened recently because I had to be over in the Seattle area. Traffic is never great over there.
No.
Someone cuts me off in traffic. My first reaction is, how dare you?
Yep.
It's anger.
It's anger. It's unjust. You are personally attacking me by putting your vehicle in my way and putting me in danger. There's an immediate reaction. Now, in doing that, I cast judgment on that person. You're a jerk. You don't care. I have summed up this person's character in a split second because I've passed judgment on this person. So one of the things that I've picked up in the 8 Keys to Forgiveness is the idea of recognizing that that is a human being. I don't know what their situation is. I don't know what they're going through right now.
Yeah.
Maybe they're on their way to the hospital because they've got a child that's in the emergency room.
Yep.
Maybe they just got off work and their boss is highly abusive and they are so consumed by what they have experienced right before they got in the car that they didn't even see me. It wasn't personal. Whatever the case may be, I can't read their mind. So I do this first part of my mantra is to remind me that I can't read their mind. And my mantra goes like this. That person, fill in the blank, that person driving that Ford Explorer, or that person, if I know their name, is special, unique, and irreplaceable in this universe. Because that is a core belief that I have, that each one of us is special, unique, and irreplaceable in this universe.
We all have value.
Yes.
Exactly. The next thing I say is, that person is doing the best they can. Whatever the situation is, we as humans do try our best, given the current circumstances, our upbringing, our knowledge, the sum of what makes us who we are. In this moment, we're doing the best we can. So I extend that to that other person. That person is doing the best they can.
Yep.
And the third thing is to check my ego, because I have a large one. And that statement is, it is not my place to critique or correct their personal truth. I may not think that they're doing as good a job as they should, could, would, any of the uds. But I have to take a moment to recognize they're special, unique, and irreplaceable. They are doing the best they can. And it is not my place to correct them.
Yeah.
Or change them.
Yeah.
We are not judge, jury, and executioner, and we forget that.
That's right.
There are times that I know when driving, I'm going to use your example of someone driving what I deem as poorly in front of me and affecting me in this way, that I have said things that I would never in a million years say to someone's face, and I'm calling them that in the car, saying it out loud, and not even thinking about how terrible of a statement I just made, because that moment of frustration is overriding what my general purpose is, knowing that they can't hear me, so it doesn't affect them.
Well, also it's about putting yourself in their shoes too, because believe me, I feel I'm a excellent driver, but I have cut people off. I have done stupid things, and a lot of the times it's during a stressful situation. I'm thinking of something I got to get to, usually on the way to my parents' house, because I'm like, oh gosh, I got to take care of this, and I got to get my mom's meds and my dad's meds, and I got to do, and then I'm like pulling in front of someone, and they're all, "Brah!" And I'm like, oh gosh, I'm sorry. You know, I try to put myself. I like how we're using driving, but it's the
It's a universal. And anyone that's driven knows exactly what we're talking about. We've all experienced it.
Yep.
But
We've all done it.
I put myself in their shoes, and I think that's a good thing to think about, because I also do that when people act up, maybe hurt my feelings or whatnot. I'm sure I have hurt many people's feelings without really realizing it. That's
We're
a
human.
difficult one. Yes. And that's a difficult one, because you can't.
By nature, we're selfish, and we think of ourselves first before we think of others. And how does it affect me? Then the secondary thought is, how have I affected them?
But
and sometimes we do it mindlessly.
Yes.
I won't go into detail, but I'm going to use the example, Lola, when I give and I give and I give, but I'm human. I hurt people's feelings. Lola came to me one time and said, "Can we talk? I really feel like you don't care about me." And she listed specific instances where I was devastated that I had ever made anyone, especially Lola, feel like this. And it was a good opportunity for me to stop and check how I interact, how I speak to people, even, especially the people I love.
Yeah.
So this mantra applies whether you're talking about a complete stranger who cannot hear what you're saying, or a loved one, your spouse, your child, your dog, whoever it is. You can apply this to any situation where you feel like there's been an injustice done. The other part of that is my mantra separates me from the actual act of what happened.
Yeah.
That person made a choice. They did an action. They did something. There may be consequences to that action. But I'm separating myself from being the judge and jury or executioner. So if that person that cuts me off on the highway is speeding, or they cause an accident, heaven forbid, they hurt another person, kill someone else, there are consequences to their actions. But I'm separating myself from that because I'm not a police officer.
Yeah.
I am not charged with upholding the law, nor am I'm not in the judiciary branch. I'm not. It's not my job to make the law. It's not my job to uphold the law. It's not my job to judge the law. Those aren't my areas of responsibility.
Yeah.
My area of responsibility is my reaction to what happens.
So what I'm hearing is judgment is a big part of leading to forgiving or not forgiving, however you want to do it. There's a judgment that happens beforehand. And that's judgment is so hard to avoid, because, and that's why I
think it's impossible.
Yeah, I love this topic because it's not just about forgiveness. It's about all the stuff that leads up to, are we going to forgive? Are we not? Is it worth? Because there's that too. Is this worth me going through the whole emotional thing? Because asking for forgiveness or giving forgiveness, whatever it is very draining and scary and emotional. Going to you that night and saying, Dee, there's these things you've done, that was like, because that's a hard thing to approach someone.
Absolutely.
You have the nerves up front, but the release on the back end of getting it off your chest is amazing.
It's amazing.
Yes. And that is called reconciliation, which oftentimes we confuse forgiveness with reconciliation. Reconciliation is the repairing of the relationship. The person who cuts me off in traffic, I don't have a relationship with that person. There's nothing to reconcile. Now, if it's someone I know, well, we may have words.
Yeah.
But when you're talking about a relationship and you're approaching me that day, that wasn't about forgiveness.
No.
That was about repairing a rift in our relationship. based on actions that had caused hurt.
Yep.
So I don't use the word forgiveness when I'm talking about other people, but I do use the word forgiveness when I'm talking about myself. And that's the second part of my mantra and this comes from the Ho'oponopono, which is an ancestral Hawaiian tradition, culture that has come into the mainstream by students of that tradition who have then opened it up to and that is a 4-part mantra, and it is all about internal.
Yeah.
So first I separate myself from the injustice that's occurred. I'm trying to do this. And I recognize and I extend the same grace to the other person as I want myself. And grace is another word that we don't talk about because it's a Christian concept.
Yeah.
It's not, it's a character virtue, but
yes.
Grace. So I've extended that grace to them. Now I need to extend the same grace to myself. I had an emotional reaction to whatever the injustice was. I create my reality. So I helped create that experience, whatever it was. So that's when I turn it internally. And that's when I walk through the 4 parts of the Ho'oponopono mantra, which is, I'm sorry to myself, not to this other person.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I recognize that this is hurtful. Please forgive me. Because I want that attitude of forgiveness within myself so that I don't hold on to the hurt. And then it's a spirit of gratitude. I say thank you. And then a spirit of love. I love you. So it's a 2-part mantra that I'm finding is working for me right now.
Yeah.
And I go through that. It's not always instantaneous. I'm brand new to this. I'm just working through this. And we respond emotionally to something that happens. That emotion rides high long before our logical brain actually kicks in.
Oh yeah.
We make decisions based on emotion, and then we use our rational mind to justify our decisions.
Absolutely.
That is the way that goes. But I'm trying to incorporate that. So it's a lot of it is looking at the differences between judgment, forgiveness, personal responsibility, consequences, reconciliation, gratitude, love. There's a lot all wrapped up into this. But I do want to qualify one thing. Abuse is never something that should be taken. If we see abuse, if you see something, say something. That is the caveat here. I lived for 7 years in a very abusive relationship, and the counsel I received based on the information I shared with people, the counsel I received was it'll be okay. God will make it all right. Just pray about it. It's going to all work itself out. But that isn't always applicable. So if someone ever comes to you and they're struggling, we need to really make sure that we're not advising someone who's suffering abuse to stay in that situation and just walk through this mantra. This is not a solution for abuse.
It's the empty platitude of hopes and prayers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
There is no substance behind it. Where we hear this, well, hopes and prayers that this is going to change. Yeah, thoughts and prayers, hopes and prayers. This is going to change. No, we have. Sometimes you got to make big change, and that's okay to make a wave. Yeah, and sometimes you got to do an action. You can't say no. And I'm glad you brought that up, because that would most likely be something that I was in this kind of abuse. That doesn't work on that level. Obviously, that we know that you come from that firsthand, but I'd like to add on that's still. So I know for me, I was in emotionally abusive relationships in my 20s. I took a lot of emotional and verbal abuse from men in my life, including my dad. That's where it started. My dad never laid a finger on me, but the verbal and emotional abuse. And I'm going to use my dad as an example.
there was forgiveness that had to happen.
No. Was that forgiveness of you or?
Well,
of
that's
him?
that's what I want to talk about, because we don't that's so hard sometimes to tell what the difference is. So my father was, and I love him dearly, and anyone who knows me knows
She's a daddy's girl.
I'm a daddy's girl. I'm taking care of him,
Which makes it that much more painful.
which makes it much more painful what I'm going through with my dad, with his dementia and all his illnesses. But I remember thinking to myself, I am so glad that, I guess, making amends.
Reconciliation. Yeah, that's what I was asking you for.
But I can honestly say I forgive my dad for all the stuff he's done. And that took a lot of self-searching and a lot of, maybe it was justification. I don't know. But and I need to now look into that, because now that we're talking about this, was it true forgiveness of myself in those situations? Was it me just saying, I gotta let go of this because he's getting older and he's always been around? And I mean, I could go on and on and on about this, but I mean, there was excuses that were made. There was, but all I know is that I don't know anything. No, but all I know is
Truth.
all I know is when he got sick and I was able to step up and help him, I don't think I'd be able to do it with such an open heart if I didn't let go of something or forgive something or make amends with something, puppy. So
Yep.
amends would you consider that reconciliation?
Reconciliation.
I would. That's the term I use for it.
Yeah.
The term I've chosen to use for it right now. I think all of it's a healing process.
Mm-hmm.
And if the word forgiveness triggers you and it has too much baggage from past religions or whatever, don't use the word forgiveness. I think we're all in a constant state of healing processes.
Yeah.
And I think that our relationships with each other as human beings are exceptionally complex, especially our close, familiar, our family relationships.
Yeah.
Well, the more important it is to you, the more value it's going to have to find.
And I
Exactly.
can't compare because I know people who have relationships with their parents that were terrible and awful, and they never made amends or whatever you want to call it. They are estranged. Mm-hmm. There's no contact. I can't go to that person and say, well, I was able to do it with my dad. So, because again, that's my personal choice. Mm-hmm. And I had to work through it, and it doesn't work for everyone, but it worked for me in this particular situation. And that's all I can.
We're all wholly unique beings, and when you have a relationship, that is a relationship between two wholly and unique beings. No other relationship in this universe is the same. So what works for me may not work for you, and I don't expect this to. You get this, and this sometimes happens a lot in religion. We find something that works for us, and we want others to experience what we've experienced. And suddenly you become evangelical about fill in the blank, whether it's how to incorporate forgiveness into your life, and we do it we're coming from a place of love. We want to share that with people. And then the next thing you know, that becomes dogma. And that is the only way you can do blah, 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 blah. And suddenly you build a religion around it, and on it goes. So I think it's important for us to always remember we're all very unique. We are all experiencing this incarnation, this reality, this world from a unique perspective. And what works for me is not necessarily going to work for anyone else in this universe but me.
It's a personal experience, just like any of these things are in our life. Our spiritual path, our family relationships, how we deal with things. There is no blanket one size fits all, but like you said, that's what makes us unique.
Well, it's everyone's path is different. Sometimes our paths will join for certain areas, but it's not going to be one straight road for everyone. And so you find the areas of commonality that work, but understand that, you know what, our differences are what make us unique, is what make us special. And we have to appreciate that every person is going to have a different mindset and be respectful of that. And even if it doesn't jive with how you think, if you see them gaining and growing from it, then maybe you can look at it and say, how can I take part of that and move it to myself?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And
the unique perspectives from others help us check our biases, check our thoughts, take a moment and reflect on the conclusions we've drawn based on our own experiences. It's great to have those different perspectives. It's valuable. If we all lived if we all thought the same and we'd live in this vacuum and it would be existence. It would be so boring.
It'd be boring.
A good visual metaphor, the way to look at this, is look into a bowl of spaghetti. Some of the noodles are going to line up and some are going to twist and turn, but they all connect in some way, shape, or form, and they all run unique.
And they all taste good.
I was going to say, they are pretty yummy.
Yeah. But
clink and drink to people.
Clink and drink to that.
Because
I'm the one that's been talking the most, but I've got the least amount of wine.
Well, we have refilled our glass already.
Yeah.
Okay. I have not.
Yeah.
We have two of us, so one of us can have a free hand to pour.
Yeah, gotcha, you'll see me just kind of go, oh, and he'll, yeah. So
a little refill off camera.
Yeah.
Oh no, it's on camera.
It's on camera.
Okay.
Here's something interesting. A lot of people also get forgiveness and letting go mixed up, because I know people who have said, I can never forgive let's abusive parents, okay? Someone who's been abused by their parents. I mean, I was, you know.
I can forgive, but I can't forget.
But that's another one. You can forgive and won't forget. But in order for them to heal, because they're holding on to that trauma, and I have had conversations with people who just can't let go of the hurt that they've received by a mother or a father. And it's valid.
Deep wound.
It's valid. And I would never say, you know, like, get over it, but it's holding them back from growing. So I have to be very careful when I say, I'm not asking you to forgive that person, but we need to work on how can you let go, or what would and that's
heal. You want to heal the wound.
Yeah.
Whatever that takes, and each person is different. Each wound is different. And sometimes it's getting to the root of the wound. It is, you know, do you feel like you were not valued? What you really have to get to the true feeling, the true emotion that's there at the heart of that wound. Because I just actually had this conversation earlier today. We talk about emotions. It's difficult to come up with the vocabulary for them.
Yeah.
You know, I am angry. Yeah. Well, are you angry, or do you feel betrayed?
Hurt.
Do you feel hurt? Are you disappointed? Do you feel like your voice wasn't heard? Do you feel like you weren't valued in that situation? Do you feel like you were, you know, and the healing process comes by, I think, first identifying the feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And I think at some point, whether you call it letting go or making amends or reconciliation or forgiveness or whatever term you use, I think that there is an internal process that we go through to heal the hurt that came from that injustice.
Yeah.
What, and something, oh, go ahead.
No,
you know, continue,
I was just going to say that is, I think, separate from holding someone accountable. If someone has abused you, and no, I'm not going to say that. In my case, I never went to the authorities and reported the abuse or did anything. My way of getting was I left. Mm-hmm. I separated myself from the person. I cut off that relationship. And that's as far as I ever went. I never sought retribution. I never sought justice. I never sought revenge. I just wanted freedom.
Yes.
Yeah.
because that was truly the hurt. That was truly the injustice, was that my freedom was infringed upon, and so I purposefully made that disconnect, and I haven't spoken to that person since.
You use the right term there. It's the hurt.
Yes.
It is not the abuse, because hurt can come in many different forms, and it may not be abusive, but a hurt. And how do you heal the hurt?
Yep.
And so that's the right term for it. And you were commenting on books that you're reading. Well, I'm currently reading Devin Hunter's The Witch's Book of Power. An amazing book.
Great book.
But he actually has a spell that actually kind of deals with this concept. And what you do is it's using sympathetic magic. Mm-hmm. You can either use a picture of them, you can write down their name, you can write down the situation, and you perform a spell, and it's the cut and release concept, where you can burn it, you can bury it, but what you're doing is you're severing that cord to not allow that to be affecting you going forward.
Right.
And it allows you to make the reconciliation, the amends, whatever term like you're saying you're using for it. Mm-hmm. And what it does is it allows you to visually see and impart whatever hurt has been imparted upon you into this, and then you can move it past yourself.
And that's so important, because that's what, it's not as simple. And maybe that's why Wicca doesn't touch upon forgiveness, because it's not that simple. There's so much that goes into it. Wicca deals with more, like you said, with the taking control of your life, manifesting your reality, and how to become powerful at healing. And because there's a lot of healing.
Yep.
Yeah, you're healing your hurts. It's all internal. It's all here. You take the focus off of that person.
Mm-hmm. You don't give them the power.
Exactly. You reclaim your power.
Yes.
You heal your own wounds. You forgive yourself. If and again, you may not use the term forgive. You may just recognize and hold space for yourself. I know we're hurting. I recognize that. And I am so sorry that we are going through this.
Yeah.
Please forgive me for getting us into the place that we were. I had to forgive myself a lot for the decisions I made to get into the relationship that I was in. But then it's the gratitude for recognizing that we have the power to create our reality and manifest something new in our life, to manifest healing, to manifest a better path forward.
And so,
and then love. You get that love. You love yourself. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I wasn't trying to cut you off. I apologize. But it brings us back to the original point of how we started this episode, talking about how we take the power and we manifest. That this is how you can do it. Is that
so there is ways of forgiving. We are working with forgiveness, but we don't call it forgiveness.
But we don't call it forgiveness. We have other names for other ways we go about it. But what we're really doing is, when you're working your shadow, you're forgiving yourself the parts that aren't necessarily warm and cuddly. We have sharp edges. We're human beings. It's not all soft and fuzzies. And we have to, instead of, you don't want to use the term forgiveness, because if that's too Judeo-Christian for you, what you have to do is learn how to round out those hard and those pointy angles of ourselves and soften them.
Yeah. And we have to also, again, there's the accountability, but because you will hear people say, well, I don't have to forgive myself because I did nothing wrong in the situation. And that may be absolutely true.
Yeah.
But you also have to think about how this situation, whatever it was, affected you, and look back on how did you carry that hurt, and how did that hurt affect others? Mm-hmm. Because you do carry that into your next relationships, your next jobs, your next whatever it is. You carry that with you, and you may not realize it at the time, but you're making other people suffer because you suffered so bad with something that happened. That's also a part of, quote unquote, forgiving yourself, because you held on for so long, and that's all you thought you deserved. So and that's what you thought was normal behavior, and how you talked to other people, I mean, perfect example is when Phil and I got together, I had a wall from here to gosh knows where, so far built up from all the hurt from others, right?
Past relationships, yeah.
And he had nothing to do with that wall. There was not a brick in that wall that had his name on it, okay? But I put him through the ringer with that wall. And it got to some points, not now, obviously, this was in the beginning, where he would start to feel hurt because he's like, I'm not those other people. I'm not those, that's not me. That's them. When are you going to trust me and let me in through that wall of yours? And it hurt him. It hurt him a lot.
Well, it's a comparative value concept that when I am not an ex, you are not one of my exes, and we have to remember that this is like you said, a new, unique, valuable person that needs to be loved and respected, and not compared against someone else. Because even though I may be of the same gender, I am not that person.
Yeah.
And you can't hold me to account for what they did.
I can't hold him responsible for past mistakes that I made.
That's not my mistakes. That was
me and those other people. And so I had to forgive myself for hurting him so much in the beginning, because I just felt, and there was a whole lot of stuff. I mean, I felt I didn't deserve happiness. I felt, this, that, and, and he was very sympathetic to it, but there's only a certain point you can go in creating something worthwhile. You have to, both sides have to learn to either, whatever you want to say, make amends, let go, forgive, whatever you want to call it. It has to happen. Just has
and I think it has to happen internally first.
Yes.
Silenus, you brought up our shadow, and that's, when we are hurt, there's a part of our soul that then gets shoved into our shadow. I've gone and visited my shadow, and I've done shadow work, which I do find interesting when people say, you have got some shadow work to do, like it's some kind of punishment.
We all, no, it's not punishment. We all have shadow work to do, and it's continual.
I'm going into my shadow to reclaim those parts of me that I set aside, that I put aside, So when I go down into my shadow self, I don't want to go through the process of how I get there, but I do. And I approach this part of myself, this part of me that is hurting, this part of me that, they say when you point, you've got 3 fingers pointing back at you. The guy or gal who cut me off on the freeway, I'm not really angry at them. I'm really angry about that part of myself.
The reaction you're having to it.
That, and that part of myself that feels entitled. When I'm driving, by God, it is my lane. It is my space. And you are I'm having a reaction.
Yeah.
Because there's that part of me, I see my shadow self in that person who has hurt me or caused an injustice. And I'm reacting to that shadow part of me.
Yeah.
So that going down, dealing with my shadow, that part of myself, that's where I want forgiveness. I want to look at that part of myself and say, whatever, all of the things that we went to get this part of me now that's in my shadow, I'm so sorry that we had to go through that.
Yeah.
Let me hold space for you. Tell me what you need. What do we need to be healed? This is a relationship within myself. What do we need to do to reconcile? That's the microcosm that we then see reflected in our macrocosm in our relationships with other people.
Well, they say the most important relationship you'll ever have is with yourself. And that is so true. And you need to treat yourself like you would, like if you don't have a good relationship with yourself, and again, this isn't, oh, you do this, and this, and you've graduated. No, it's an ongoing thing.
A lifelong journey. This is a lifelong journey.
It is, and many other lives.
It's even said in the charge of the goddess. if you cannot find that within, you'll never find it without.
Yes.
So you have to be able to look at yourself and find it before that you can find others that are going to help enhance that.
Right. So you have to get in there and heal the wound internally. Forgive yourself if you want to use the word forgiveness. If you don't want to use the word forgiveness, then heal that shadow part of you that is hurting. Heal that wound, and then you can go out, if you choose, to then make amends or reconcile a relationship with someone else. Well, but that's where I think some of the Judeo-Christian concepts of forgiveness for me, I struggled with, because it was, you've been forgiven because you are innately unworthy of anything. But you've been graced with, you've been given forgiveness, therefore you are obligated to forgive others. Well, it's all external, and I need to deal with internal.
And we all had, if we were in those Judeo-Christian families, I grew up with ex-Catholics, but still very Christian. There's they go to their priest for forgiveness. Forgive me, Father, for I have sinned. There's so much about forgiveness in Christian and Catholicism. I mean, they literally go to someone who
to
is
absolve them from their sins.
Absolve them.
Because it's external.
Yes. And I like this. I like this discussion because it does come back to what we can do. I think as Wiccans, we are already doing a form of forgiveness. We're just not calling it that.
I agree.
Well, there's the concept of the threefold. We all know it. Well, sometimes when your actions are, the threefold law is the guilt you carry with you. It affects things going forward, where you realize that you wronged someone, and you can't go to that person and make the reconciliation, the amends, because they may have severed ties with you at that point. So if you carry a guilt with you, you have to learn how to get rid of that, and so it is going to affect you.
You have to forgive yourself.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I did that with when I was working my sobriety.
I was going to say the 12 steps.
The 12
Look
steps.
at where the amends fall in those steps.
4. Well, step 4 is to list the amends. Step 5, I believe, is you actually go to the people to make. But I had to do that, and I went to a place where and again, I had to forgive myself for being this person, but when I was drugging a lot, I did some yucky things in life. And one of the things I did was and again, it was in my 20s, I stole money from a place I worked at. And I had to go back to this person and make him, I didn't have to, but it was part of my recovery. And they were on my list. They were up there towards the top. Because I felt awful. I was like, oh my gosh, that is not me. I need to ask for amends. I need to make amends. And I went to this lady and I said, hey, I'm working my steps. During the time I was working for you, I was on drugs pretty heavily, blah, blah, blah. And I got fired from the job. She caught me. It was, taking money here and there out of the cash register. And I went to her and she said, I don't forgive you. Leave the store now or I will call the cops. And I said, okay. And I left. And I remember thinking, wow, that didn't go the way it was planned. But because I was really working the program and really understanding the shadow work that was involved in that, I was okay with it. I was totally okay because it wasn't about hearing them say, I forgive you. It was about acknowledging, saying, look, I did these things. It was terrible. I'm sorry. If they forgave me, oh my God, beautiful. It was wonderful. But if they didn't, because there was a couple that didn't.
That's their right to.
That's their right to?
Absolutely. Not every relationship needs to be repaired or reconciled.
No.
For some people who have an estranged relationship with their parents, I will never tell you that you have to repair that.
No.
It may not be in your best and highest good to repair that relationship. it's not in my best and highest good to ever repair my relationship with my former abuser.
Yeah. No.
There's nothing that says I have to.
No, there's not.
But if you feel,
but you've repaired
your feelings.
I've repaired my relationship with myself
yes.
over this. I have healed and am healing that wound. But I don't want to sound callous. But there are just some people in this world that are not worth my time.
No.
Ever again.
No.
And I don't have to have a relationship with everyone on this planet.
Nope.
No. And
I am likable and everyone should love me.
Well, of course.
But
that's
my ego.
Yes. Well, my ego's the same way. I'm like, why wouldn't this person forgive me? I'm a true delight. But
there are some relationships that we do want to reconcile.
Yes.
And so, we heal our own hurt. We nervously approach the other person and say, I feel like we need to talk about something.
No.
And then that process is different, but it works hand in hand with that. That's my take on forgiveness.
Well, no, and I feel I agree, and I think that you're right. Not every relationship is gonna be worth working out, or it just may not work out because it's just not meant to. It's just not.
It's not
maybe
in the cards.
You've tried, and it's just not in the cards. And if that person isn't gonna, like, if you want to go to someone like, like this was an old boss, but I've gone to people who I care a lot about, and they haven't reconciled with me, and my ego got bruised, right? And you have to be able to recognize, okay, this isn't because I'm a bad person or I don't deserve quote unquote forgiveness. This is my ego being bruised, but they have every right to feel the way they do. I cannot control how they're going to feel. If they don't want anything to do with me,
that's their prerogative.
That's their prerogative, and that's
our worth
right.
isn't determined by someone else.
It is not. No, it's not. Our worth, I believe, is determined by what work we do with ourselves and what we feel and think about ourselves. That's our worth. And in order to feel worthy, you got to work on it. You got to heal it, because there's so many of us that don't feel worthy of these certain things. And so, yeah, it's, but again, I think that's why we don't talk about forgiveness, because I think we're already doing versions of it. We're just not labeling it forgiveness, and that actually makes me feel a little bit better.
But and so often, like we've been saying, is we think of forgiveness as in others, but the only person you really need to forgive is yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And
that's my belief, is that the only person I need to forgive is myself. Now, if I want to repair a relationship, that takes two, because it takes two to have a relationship.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it took two to ruin it, and it takes two to try to fix it, if that is your prerogative, if that's what you want to do, or if that's what they want to do. I mean, timing is very important.
It is.
The work that maybe they haven't worked on some things within themselves, where they may not be ready to have that conversation, whether it was them that needs the forgiving or the other whatever it is. That's a big part of it. We've talked about that. It's a lot of shadow work.
Mm-hmm.
But we're coming up on an hour, so I want to go ahead and wrap things up. We could talk all night about this.
Absolutely.
This is
a great conversation.
Such a great conversation. I am so glad that you joined us, Dee, because I really felt I wanted your input, because you're the one that influenced this topic.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's
important.
Thank you for
having me.
And I really appreciate it. So before we go, thank you. We love you, Dee, and clink and drink to friendships and
clink and drink.
all of that. Yeah. Yeah.
To friendships and reconciling those friendships, and continuing to walk with each other on our each individual unique paths.
And to continue working on ourselves and growing, because I love shadow work. When you said earlier, shadow work, sometimes like, you need to do shadow work like it's a punishment. Oh, I don't think of it as a punishment either. I think it is essential. And it is something that I actually enjoy doing. Now, when I get to the nitty gritty and those things are revealed, yeah, there's a part of me that's going to go, well, maybe we can put that off. And then I'll go,
I'm not really willing to talk about that right now.
No.
So,
Yeah,
we'll
but when someone says you need to do some shadow work, that they're passing judgment, and that should be an indication that
right there, that you know, okay,
if they're pointing at me saying you need to do some shadow work, there's 3 fingers pointing back at them. We all need to do shadow work.
Everyone does.
I will put a caveat to that. If it is your mentor or your high priest or priestess telling you this, then there's value to be said in that compared to a general person saying it.
Look at this good student.
Yeah. Yes. Training relationships, mentor relationships, student teacher, that's different.
We do have to say it might be time to do some shadow work on that.
Yeah, so I will put a small caveat on that.
But still, I can suggest it. It doesn't mean they're going to do it.
Yes.
It's a lifelong path.
Yeah.
Working with our shadow is a lifelong path.
It is a lifelong path, and it is essential to who we are. So thank you so much, Dee, for being here. Before we go, to our viewers, if anyone is interested in what we do, if you want to be on our show, if you have great topics for us, I mean, we are willing to talk about just anything.
Mm-hmm.
Then you can email us at
crossroadscoven@gmail.com.
I'm sorry, what was that?
That was crossroadscoven@gmail.com.
Thank you so much for joining us. Next week, we are having Sarita D'Este. I'm mispronouncing your name. She writes amazing books on Hecate. She is awesome. I am totally slaughtering her name. Sarita, if you're watching this, I've had wine. So we're going to have her next week, and we'll advertise that and all that fun stuff. So remember, everyone, please, please be kind to each other and always walk with the goddess. And until next time, blessed be and clink and drink. Woo!
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
I don't have any more wine. I should have